Each Man Owes a Death by J. Wilburn. We're going to read through. I'll make changes. I'm going to add some things in, kind of try to flesh out this sort of story, so to speak, which is going to be kind of ironic when the characters jump up if you're not familiar with the story. So let's jump right in. Dex Kitchen stood across from the man he had trailed his entire life. All right, let me break this into another paragraph and add a sentence here. Hey, Zach, thanks for jumping right in, man. All right. Every step of the long journey marked with boot prints, cold campfires, and bodies. So many bodies along, let's just get fancy here, the dusty way. Gotta use the word dusty every once in a while if you're gonna write a western, I think. Hey, XOXO, thanks for jumping in. Yo to you too. Alright, his hand hovered. Alright, I need to say who I'm talking about because I kind of got two guys standing across from each other here, so we'll say Dex's. Don't usually want to use the same starter for every paragraph, but I'm gonna say it's okay here. Dex's hand hovered over the butt of his gun, holstered at his hip. The fellow across from him prepared to draw left-handed. Dex never trusted left-handed gunslingers. When it came down to it, he didn't trust much of anyone. The fellow's bony hand hung dead still above. Alright, I need to make that hyphenated so it makes sense. It's probably not the right way to do that, but for the reading purposes, it makes more sense. Hung dead still above his weapon. Cold nerves didn't twitch a bit. Dex had a twitch, more than a few. Maybe it was one that traveled. Sometimes it settled in his face or shoulder. Other days it plagued his hands. A day like today, it would not do to twitch anywhere from the shoulder down. He'd likely find himself shot dead before he was ready to draw. All right, I need to bring this back. I mentioned it, obviously, at the beginning when I'm writing here, but I didn't use that in the story, so I'm going to need to find a couple places to put in Dex's twitches. All right, Dex's name was short for something, but he couldn't remember what. The opponent, the nemesis, went by many names over the years of his chase to this final showdown. Mossman, Pickett, Champion. Let's say I got a bug on my screen. All right, let's say, and more, but Dex just thought of him as the dead man, and I need to capitalize this. Dead man, comma, death himself. Death his own self. Kind of the way Joe Lansdale refers to himself, I think. Dead man was either laying down today. I need to make this clear. It's kind of a threat. Dead man was either ending the day boots up, or he was dishing out death itself. All right, that reads a little better. All right, let's keep it moving here. The bony fingers opened, but did not grab and pull. Testing Dex's nerves, seeing if he could cause the twitch. The fingers were literally bony, no flesh, no blood, just bones leading up into his duster's sleeves. Might be easier just to say coat, but we're writing a western here, so we want it to be a duster. All his teeth showed in a wide skeletal grin. Empty sockets stared unblinking where living men kept their eyes. A tan hat rested low on the exposed skull of the gunslinger across from Dex. The dead man. Let me capitalize again. We've kind of established that as a name. The dead man was a skeleton in cowboy gear with the killing tool of a man. With the killing tool... Alright, let me put a comma here. With the killing tool of a living man loaded full. Dex didn't much care how this contest ended. Sure, he rooted for himself, but just that it would be over. But let's say somehow satisfied in the dark knowledge that it would be over before sundown was enough for him today. Alright. That could probably use some cleaning up, but I'll catch it on another pass. Alright, the rip crack of the shot surprised them both. Dex never saw the dead man's arm move. Yeah, okay. He just heard the shot echo through the abandoned mine town. I feel like that should be a compound word, but I don't think it's going to take it. But I'm gonna make a compound anyway. Dead man lifted his hands away from his sides and felt over his shirt as if he were, let's say, a person who could bleed and expected to be doing so. They met gazes again, Dex's eyes and dead man's empty sockets. Another volley of shots kicked up dust from the street and splinters from weathered boards of empty buildings. Let's say of the empty buildings, because we've established they're in this town, so it's not just a random place. They both scattered, Dex and the dead man, each to his own cover. Dex caught a glimpse of the attackers from their position of ambush. They were regular flesh and blood, not skeletons like the one he came here to fight. That made him feel no better. Having skin never made Dex trust anyone. Trust a man. Okay. All right, let's say simply having skin. I'm trying to be clever with these sentences, and I think I'm being unclear sometimes. Simply having skin never made him trust a man. It never made Dex trust a man particularly. Particularly would probably be better before trust, but I'll leave it for now. The windows lack glass, but there, wrong kind of there. That would be embarrassing if anyone saw me do that. Thank goodness we're just us friends here. The windows lack glass, but there was enough shards to cut himself on if he chose to take a dive. A little glass beat a little. Okay, a little glass beat a little bullet. Okay, let's say the sting. I'm starting to see my flaws here in writing westerns. The sting of a little glass beat a little bullet anytime. Beat the, say, the bite. Okay, keep it parallel because we have one sting and one biting. Beat the bite of a little bullet anytime, but Dex always sought a way to save his skin in the end. Alright, let's say he saw too much detail in the attacking men. Bared teeth, bloodshot eyes from a low position farther on. A drooping handlebar mustache framed chapped lips so ashen they looked crusted over. Okay. Dex needed to stop taking inventory and either start shooting back or find something to put between him and the flying lead. There we go. All right. Feel like we got some good action detail there, and I can press on. He ran along the edge of the structures, feeling the shrapnel of impacts all around him as he ran further than was wise. He saw his spot and understood it was too far at the same time. Maybe someone was reloading or the wind favored him, but Dex made his dive over the low wall without getting hit and landed in sand instead of stone or glass. Dex finally reached for his gun and prepared to put his own lead into the discussion. He looked into the empty sockets of a skull. The dead man had lost his hat. The bone plates of the skull were yellow. The bone plates of, let's say, his enemies. Let's say his old enemies. There we go. The bone plates of his old enemy's skull were more yellow-brown than they were white. He never intended to get this close to death. The skeleton gave a nod like they were old friends. Dex supposed they were well acquainted. Not an equal sign. Put a dash in there. How embarrassing. Thank goodness we're all friends here. At the very least. Bullets rang off the stone above them. And Dex still had not drawn. Let me put a contraction there. Let's keep it casual. Still hadn't drawn. The skeleton extended his hand. As the sleeve pulled up, Dex saw the space between the bones of the arm. Alright, let me add something here. A piece of dry skin hung from one of the, let's say, jerky dry. That gives you a better picture, I think. A piece of jerky dry skin hung from one of the arm bones, like a strip of poorly tanned leather. There we go. So we got kind of a visceral detail there for this walking skeleton that he's came here to fight. He had fought this moment all his life. He had fought against this moment all his life, even as he always drew closer to it. But death came to every man in time. Thinking otherwise was a fool's game. Maybe this was it. Dex had resolved himself to that possibility. These jokers who tracked him and death to this spot were not going to let him walk out any way. Let me make that anyhow. Sounds better, I think. Alright, moving right along. Dex reached and took the cold grasp of the dead man. It was as awful as he imagined. Let me add a little more here. His fleshy hands. Hold on. The flesh of his living fingers pinched between the bones of dead man's digits as they curled closed around him. Alright, good enough. I like that detail. Don't need to overdo it, but I think I got some I think I'm popping in some good details there. I feel good about them. But then the dead man shook his hand and let Dex go, still breathing. Death rolled to his belly and pulled back the hammer on his shooter. Did they just buddy up? Dex supposed between the two of them they had dealt more death than any duo. Let me change that up. I'm using death a lot. Let's say more last days. More last days. We'll make it a series here. More last days. Final moments. And meetings with Jesus than any duo. Today was as good a day as any to join up. Dead man waved the barrel out at the attack. Out at the, let's say, incoming. Out at the incoming attack, like he was getting impatient with Dex's sluggishness. Dex finally drew his weapon. It was about time for him to start pulling his weight for this team. Dead man shot first over the wall before standing. Dex joined him and hit nothing with 3 bullets. The attackers had pulled out from cover and were moving up. The misses served to send them scattering for the closest, closest scattered debris again. Okay. Death ran backward as he fired. Dex thought he'd been double-crossed, but Death motioned wildly for him to come on. He almost ate a couple bullets for his delay, but got out. Let's use Dex's name again. I don't like overusing names, but I don't want anybody to be confused about who's doing what. Dex almost ate a couple bullets for his delay, but got out and away from the choke point unharmed. They worked a rolling retreat. Death wasn't much of a talker, but he knew strategy. Each fired while the other reloaded. Dex noted that Death had more bullets than him. If they had more bullets than him, let's put a little joke in here. That made sense. Of course, Death would have more bullets than you, wouldn't you think? Alright, that made sense. If they got out alive, so to speak, he might be out. He might be out of ammo. He might, let's say, he might be spent of ammo. And the showdown would resume at his disadvantage. He had to survive one attack at a time, so he kept shooting. They made it almost to the edge of the empty town, opposite where Dex had entered, before they landed in a crossfire. Death kept retreating and Dex followed. He thought at least he was done for. Okay, at least doesn't make sense. Let me fix this. He thought, let's just say for sure. I don't know. Start writing westerns, you kind of try to get cute with your sentence structure, I think. At least I do. Alright, this should be better. He thought for sure he was done for, even if the skeleton couldn't die. Still, Death appeared to be taking cover, so maybe he was vulnerable too. Oh. Okay, let's add something in here. Dex rubbed hard at one eye that had started twitching on him. He glanced at the skeleton and readied himself to move again, but the dead man grabbed his arm in a bony grip and held him in place. Dex met Death's stare, but read nothing in it. He did not trust this pile of bones, but he stayed true anyway. Then he saw the plan. The ambushers moved through a choke point formed by the last buildings in town. Death nodded and Dex pulled back his hammer. They opened up, and a few of the men ran face first into boarded walls in their panic. A few escaped as they backed away, but Death reloaded quickly and took most of the rest. Death dropped... Okay. Let's do something else here. The sure shot skeleton dropped open its silent jaw in what might have been a laugh or a scream. Dead Man motioned for Dex to follow, and he did. They ran out on the trail, past the first bend, and Dex cried out when he saw the skeletal horse with a saddle on its back. He'd seen plenty of bleached bones like these in the open desert. He'd never stumbled upon one upon a set. He'd never stumbled upon a set that was still standing and saddled to ride. The bony beast actually snorted. I don't know why that's misspelled. Hold on. It is not. Computer is lying to me. Alright. The bony beast actually snorted out a cloud of white dust. And shook its bare skull with a rattle. The undead horse skeleton looked reptilian to Dex without its skin or muscles. Maybe like a small dragon from a dark, let's say the darkest fairy tale. Alright, I think I got good detail there. Dex is sufficiently scared of this skeleton horse. Alright. The bony... I've already done that. Death mounted up and offered a hand to Dex Kitchens. Dex licked his teeth and glanced over his shoulder. He heard the survivor shouting. Still, he said, I think my horse is on the other side of town. I might try for that. A sharp clicking noise brought Dex's attention back around. Death was snapping his fingers at him. Let me make that plural, if you don't mind. Snapping his fingers at him. Without skin, it was the most awful, hair-raising noise. Alright, Dex put on a glove before accepting Death's hand this time. The dead man pulled him up onto the skeleton horse's back. The horse rode hard with the killers on its back. Okay, with both killers on its back. Okay, that works. Dex only let himself wonder for a moment how it did so with no muscle. Maybe the skeleton animal grow tired? Alright, let's say he's sitting behind the saddle was an exercise in torture. The folds of bone and the connections between the lumps of backbones were worse than riding a rail. Let's say worse than riding a sharp rail. shots echoed, and he looked back. He looked over, let's say, he cut his eyes to see riders firing from mount as they pursued. Dex aimed as carefully as he could, but pulled off dry shots. Everything was perfect except he was out. Everything was perfect except he was out of bullets. Checking his belt, he confirmed he had none to spare. Let's say. Kind of trying to find new ways to say the exact same things. And holstered his empty. I'm dry bones, he said, after he tried to be cute. He wondered if Death would understand what he meant. Let's say dry bones. We'll make that italic so it's like a thought. Alright, Dead Man drew a weapon and offered it back. This was turning into quite a day. Dex accepted and took aim. Alright, let me break this paragraph. I'm going to add in another twitch for Dex. Two of Dex's fingers twitched. He tried to concentrate the spasm away, but failed. All right, there we go. All right, now we can keep moving. Death found another gun, and with one hand on the reins and the other twisted back parallel with Dex, they both opened up. Okay. Shouldn't have worked, but they managed more hits than misses. A couple riders sought to peel off, but Death didn't let them go. The horses fled with empty saddles. Alright, Dex missed the last guy. Missed his attempt on the last guy, but his partner put one into the throat. Into the last rider's throat. I think I hear moths outside. They're really going wild against the windows. Alright, as the last fighter toppled, his rifle cracked off wild, and Dex felt it in his back. He leaned forward on Death as they rode away. Alright, let me fix the spelling there. Hitting the last page here. In the open and alone, Death pulled the undead animal to a stop. He slid off its back, leaving Dex holding onto the saddle and the extra weapon Death had given him. Dex took a deep breath and worked his bad arm. It felt like his shoulder took the worst of it, let's say. But that was no free ticket. Especially riding with the dead man. The fact that Death had stopped their ride was probably a bad sign. He started to dismount, but Dead Man held him in place. Dex just stared as Death passed him the reins. It felt good to climb up onto the leather of Death's saddle like a proper rider. Dex shook his head, not in disagreement, but in confusion. He tried to offer Death back his pistol, but Dead Man shook his yellowed skull. So Dex found a spot in the saddlebag for it. As Death started to walk... I need to get some micro things here. As Death started to walk away, back the way they had come, Dex asked, "Are you giving me a free pass?" Dead Man turned with his expressionless face, and he shrugged his bony shoulders. Alright. "What are you going to do now?" Dex asked, but then feared the answer. Death pointed to the top of his head and turned to walk away. Dex swore Dead Man was telling him he was going back for his hat. Going back for his, let's say, lost hat. Dex took in the fact that he sat on Death's skeleton horse. He needed to get somewhere he could get his shoulder tended to, but he had no idea how to explain this ride. So he clicked his tongue and got his new undead horse moving again. He wondered how many people would believe his story about shaking hands with Death and making him shrug in the same day. The bone horse would probably help.